Tehran, 1953. Kingston, 1980. Havana, 1961. Benghazi, 2011. Different languages, different flags, different leaders. But if you strip away the names and look at the moves, something uncomfortable appears. Oil nationalized here, bauxite reclaimed there, a foreign base kicked out, a new alliance formed, and then suddenly, coups, sanctions, destabilization, airstrikes.
In this episode, we're going to put all the pieces on the table. Iran, Cuba, Jamaica, the nuclear file, Libya. We're going to ask, is this just a bunch of unrelated crises? Or are we looking at one playbook being applied to different countries that dared to push back?
Let's start where we began this whole journey. Iran, 1953. A democratically chosen prime minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, decides that Iranian oil should serve the Iranian people, not just British shareholders. He moves to nationalize the oil industry. In response, Britain and the United States organize a covert operation, what we now call Operation Ajax, to remove him and strengthen the Shah. Propaganda, bribed politicians, hired street mobs, pressure on the palace. 4 days later, the government falls. Iran's elected leader is out. A pro-Western monarch rules with expanded powers. The message is clear. Nationalize the wrong resource, and your government can be erased.
That's the prototype. A regime that challenges foreign control of its resources is framed as unstable, dangerous, maybe even leaning toward the enemy. Covert tools are used to tip the scales, and decades of mistrust follow.
Now jump to the Caribbean. In Cuba, a revolution led by Fidel Castro topples a US-aligned dictator. The new government nationalizes foreign-owned land and companies, including major US interests. When Cuba moves closer to the Soviet Union, Washington responds with an attempted invasion at the Bay of Pigs, a long trade embargo, and a crisis that nearly brings the world to nuclear war. Once again, challenging the economic order and picking the wrong ally brings the full weight of the superpower. Further south, Jamaica in the 1970s tries a different path: democratic socialism under Michael Manley, closer ties with the non-aligned movement and Cuba, and talk of a new international economic order. As Manley pushes for more control over Jamaica's bauxite and economy, he faces economic pressure, political destabilization, and a wave of violence leading up to the 1980 elections, culminating in the rise of a more US-aligned government under Edward Seaga.
Iran, Cuba, Jamaica, very different places. But look at the common threads. Leaders who try to rewrite the terms of trade and sovereignty, media campaigns that paint them as reckless or dangerous, and intense pressure, sometimes covert, sometimes open, to replace them with something more manageable.
Add another ingredient: nuclear fear. After World War II, whoever controls nuclear technology and weapons gets a special kind of leverage. So when a state outside the inner club pushes for nuclear capacity, alarm bells ring. In Iran, after the 1979 revolution, the memory of the 1953 coup and the US role in supporting the Shah fuels a deep distrust of Western intentions. Iranian leaders see nuclear technology as insurance, a way to make sure no one can topple them the way Mossadegh was toppled. On the other side, US and allied leaders, haunted by the hostage crisis and regional attacks, see any Iranian nuclear capability as an existential threat. Every negotiation, every breakdown, every sanction is supercharged by the ghosts of past interventions and betrayals.
The nuclear file isn't just about centrifuges and enrichment levels. It's about history being weaponized. One side says, we need this to survive. The other says, if you have this, we can't survive.
and both sides point to decades of bad blood as proof they can't trust the other. This same logic shapes how weapons, technology, and alliances are viewed in other countries too. If a government already seen as a problem steps toward anything that looks like serious deterrent power, regime change pressure ramps up. Now, bring it back to Libya. In the 1970s, Gaddafi expels foreign bases, nationalizes oil, and uses state wealth to support movements that challenge Western and regional status quos. He becomes both a sponsor of violent groups and a symbol of defiant independence. For that, Libya is sanctioned, isolated, and bombed. Later, when uprisings break out during the Arab Spring, the old villain narrative makes it much easier to sell military intervention as a humanitarian necessity. A no-fly zone to protect civilians turns into an air war that helps rebels topple the regime. Gaddafi is killed, the state collapses, and Libya spirals into militia rule and proxy war. On the scoreboard of regime change, the box next to Libya is checked. On the ground, the cost is chaos that still hasn't ended. If you watch Libya in isolation, it looks like a tragic one-off. But once you've walked through Iran, Cuba, Jamaica, and the nuclear file, it starts to look more familiar. A government that didn't play by the script gets framed as a threat to stability, to security, to the world. And when the opportunity comes, it's removed. The aftermath is someone else's problem. In each case, the language changes with the times. Fighting communism, stopping terrorism, protecting civilians, preventing proliferation. But beneath the labels, the core concerns are remarkably consistent. Resources, strategic geography, alliances, and the risk of a bad example spreading. So what does this playbook actually look like? It's not a secret document with bullet points. It's a pattern of behavior that repeats. Step 1. A government moves to control its own resources, resist foreign bases, or choose alliances outside the preferred orbit. Step 2. Media and diplomatic narratives shift. The leader is painted as unstable, extremist, corrupt, or a threat to regional order. Step 3. Economic pressure ramps up. Sanctions, trade restrictions, financial squeeze. Step 4. Covert tools come into play, supporting opposition groups, information warfare, political funding, sometimes direct sabotage or coups. Step 5. If a crisis hits, uprising, disputed election, internal conflict, the moment is seized. External powers back certain actors, push for transitions, or move under the banner of humanitarianism or counter-terrorism. Step 6. If the regime falls, the deeper question, what replaces it and who really controls the new order, often gets far less attention. Not every case follows every step. Not every leader targeted is a hero. Some are absolutely brutal. But the pattern shows us something important. It's not just about what these governments are, it's about what they do in relation to global power. And the punishment for stepping outside the lines is remarkably similar across continents and decades. Why does any of this matter now? Because the same logic is still shaping decisions today. When you hear calls for sanctions, interventions, or supporting democracy in a particular country, you're rarely hearing about just that moment. You're hearing echoes of all the moments that came before. For smaller and mid-sized states, the lesson is bitter. Push too hard for true independence, and you may trigger a sequence of events you can't control. For citizens in powerful countries, the lesson is just as uncomfortable. Your governments may be using noble language to sell actions that follow a very old, very self-interested script. Seeing the playbook doesn't mean every uprising is fake or every intervention is wrong. It means we stop treating each case like a surprise It means asking harder questions earlier about who benefits, who bleeds, and what happens the day after the bombs stop falling. We've gone from a 4-day coup in Iran to decades of sanctions and nuclear standoffs. From a Caribbean island's search for justice to destabilization and IMF austerity. From Libya's oil revolution to a shattered state. In the final episode of this Libya series, we're going to bring it right up to today's headlines. Airstrikes, drone attacks, cross-border operations. How Libya, even now, is being shaped by decisions made far beyond its borders. And how those decisions link back to this entire chain of history, from Operation Ajax onward. If you've stayed with this series all the way to episode 7, you're exactly the kind of person I'm making these videos for. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this with someone who still thinks history is just names and dates, not a live playbook being used right now. In the comments, tell me this. After everything we've covered, from Iran to Jamaica to Libya, do you think small countries can ever really choose their own path? Or is the price of real independence just too high in a world built like this?